Peter Navarro,
Steve Bannon,
now in prison.
But they couldn't stop them.
There's not a prison built that will ever shut me up.
They call them rebels.
Basket of deplorables.
They call them rogues.
They claim to guns or religion.
And they say they're outlaws.
These are the kind of guys you like to smack in the ass.
War Room presents Rebels, Rogues, and Outlaws.
You set out to take Vienna. Take Vienna!
The national bestseller by longtime Bannon producer Dan Fluette. Take a journey through the pictorial history of War Room in a culture that celebrates the weak. Show your support by standing with the rebels. Go to doitfluette.com or scan the QR code on your screen. Use the code RAV20 for 20% off your order. Stand with the rebels and never back down.
Well, ring the bell, Glaukos, or whatever the heck you guys are. Broad and Wall Market about to close. Closing. It is closed, folks. And it matters. The markets matter. I know you say bowling, you're always talking about the market, but because the markets matter to every single American. We want a strong, healthy market. We need that. We want to show the globe. Trump knows what he's doing. We're the strongest country on the planet. We have the strongest military. We have the strongest government. We also need the strongest markets, and we have that, folks. 42,974 down 100. At one point, over 43,000 on the day. NASDAQ at one point was approaching a record high earlier in the day. At 20,200 is the record. It was 20,000 ballpark 100 at one point. And you can see the VIX easing off a little bit. That's good. I'm going to talk about oil a lot later in the show, and I'm concerned about that 86 cents up. 65 is still a good number for the barrel of oil. Would love to see it down below 60, and there's a reason why I want to talk about this. I want to talk about this with Bannon. Hopefully we have him at the end of the show, because I want to get information to Trump, because I think there's an important play here with oil right now. And we'll stick around. We'll talk to Steve about it, see if he can. He's got the ear of the White House. Hopefully he can get into the White House. Crypto, very quickly. Bitcoin very strong today. 107,598. It was up to over 108,000 at one point today. Again, approaching that all-time high at 111, almost 112,000. Crypto strong. All right, folks. Really, really, really solid market day today. Alrighty, folks, you all know my next guest, the CEO and editor-in-chief of Just the News, No Noise, John Solomon. Welcome, John. John, they tell me you have news about the Trump administration. This is really fascinating. Conducting an in-depth vetting process into the scientists that come from countries of concern. Tell us all about that. And you had an exclusive interview. Go ahead. Tell us about what this focus is.
China. Yeah. We saw just 3 weeks ago that 3 Chinese scientists were caught trying to bring deadly pathogens or dangerous pathogens into the country, things that could wipe out our crops if they got into the nature. They were on our payroll. These were NIH scientists we were funding, and you just have to ask yourself, why are we funding China researchers who are trying to bring deadly pathogens into our country, particularly after what we learned about COVID-19 and what happened at the Wuhan Institute of Virology? And the answer is nobody's been watching that store for a very long time. Dr. Anthony Fauci and all of his buddies turned the NIH into a big import machine of Chinese scientists. Almost 1,000 scientists are currently working at the NIH on our taxpayers' dollar on often very sensitive research like viruses. And they're here on visas, and they weren't vetted. They were not vetted. And now we know that China requires all of its citizens when they're overseas to support the Chinese Communist Party. That includes espionage, learning anything they can that they can bring back to the government. We have confirmed that there is a massive counterintelligence investigation of all 1,000 scientists currently working at the NIH who hail from foreign countries that are of concern, countries that have either hostile relationships with us or a significant presence of terrorists. How did we get 1,000 of them from those countries? It's because Joe Biden wasn't watching. And what the Trump administration learned about in March was that we weren't vetting these, and they needed to have a new vet go on. And that process has secretly been going on for months. While we talk about that, we had a great interview with a Chinese scientist who defected to the United States during the middle of the pandemic. She's the woman, Dr. Tan, who actually said that the virus was man-made and that it leaked from Wuhan. Of course, she was ridiculed at the time. We now know that to be the prevailing view of the Defense Intelligence Agency.
I remember her.
The FBI.
I remember her speaking out to the point where you're right, she was belittled, she was ridiculed, she was called racist, she was called a bunch of names, and there were protests in Washington, D.C. for and against what she was saying. And turns out now that she's blowing the whistle, let's call her a whistleblower because that's really kind of what she is here, that there are up to 1,000 foreign visa holders that were unvetted who are now working within our NIH and I guess also within our university system as well, in some of the more scientific research labs there as well. That's where those three researchers were working in the University of Michigan. So the universities are like the extended arm of the NIH, and that's where a lot of these foreign scientists from hostile countries are. What this woman's going to tell us, you're going to get to see her tomorrow night at 6 o'clock. Steve Gruber and I are going to team up for a special about the dangers of agroterrorism. What she says, what Dr. Yen says in this interview, is that every scientist who lands an NIH or American university researcher gig signs a contract back at home before they can get their visa in China. That requires them to do the bidding of China while they're on U.S. soil. That means getting as much intellectual property as they can from Americans and bringing it back home. It means doing research that would advance something like China's bioweapons program. By the way, she says there is a bioweapons program. She knows it. She was a virologist working on it. And she goes through in great detail exactly how China controls, manipulates, and uses these scientists to get information back to China that can one day harm America. She says these scientists are like the equivalent of a parasite. They're sucking the intellectual property blood and the innovative know-how of America out of our research labs so that China can get an upper hand against the United States. It really is both.
Supremacy.
It's two-pronged. You're right. Yeah. The bioterror threat was massive, and this is probably the most pressing, the one you really want to lean into the most. But the other one, it costs us probably hundreds of billions of dollars or more when Chinese students come over, Chinese business people come over. They really come over to learn what we're doing. John, I keep telling the story over the years. We used to bring in Chinese businessmen. They come into our factories, and they would wear rubber shoes underneath that would have sticky rubber underneath, and they would pick up to find out what type of alloys what type of metals we were mixing to use the things that we're making some of our defense assets with as well, to mirror and to find out where we had weaknesses. They work so smart, John.
Yeah, nonstop espionage. And as we're learning now, they were also involved in meddling in the 2020 election. A new story we just had an hour or two ago. The FBI is now confirming that the reason the FBI didn't follow up on those 2020 allegations that China was meddling in the election, trying to win it for Joe Biden by getting fake driver's license that would result in fake mail-in ballots, is because the FBI didn't want to contradict the testimony that Chris Wray had previously given. He was the prior director. Just think about that. A intelligence threat that threatens the integrity of our election. And the FBI is like, we're not going to look at that because the director said something a few months ago that wasn't the same thing. What culture allows that to go on in the FBI? Fortunately, we're under new management, but we're learning how bad the last management was and how China exploited it.
John, Russia as well, are they involved? I got to assume it's not just China, although the majority, I'm guessing, are, but other countries, dangerous countries?
There's a couple Russians and a couple Iranian scientists that have been in the country on these visas, and we don't know a lot about them yet. We're working on that. But it's just an extraordinary thing. I tried to get just numbers from the NIH. How many by country? Oh, it's too sensitive to tell you. What do you mean it's too sensitive? You let them in the country. We, the Americans, are entitled to know. Thus far, I can't get even the overall numbers. We have confirmed the investigation is focusing on 1,000. That is an almost unthinkable number when you think about not all countries, but just the countries that are hostile to America, like China, Iran, Russia.
And these people come over, right? And correct me if I'm wrong, they'll come over with the intent to go back to China always. I mean, they're not coming over here to come here and make our society better. They're coming to either plant something horrific or to bring back the good stuff that we're developing here.
Yeah, That's exactly right. And that's why the Chinese give them their mission card before they get their exit visa. China has an exit visa. You can't even leave China without the government permissioning you. So they know when these scientists get an American visa, they get a Chinese visa. Before that happens, they're given their mission orders. They're like junior spies, and they're collecting intel for the benefit of the Communist Party of China, not for the benefit of American taxpayers.
John Solomon breaks the best news. I mean, not the best news, but the greatest news. It's stuff that we really need to know. Just the news. Really, no noise. Just the news, no noise. You got to watch John at 6 o'clock. And tomorrow night, is it special tomorrow night?
Tomorrow night, it's going to be, Gruber and I are going to team up. It's going to be fun. We're hoping to have Dan Bongino on. We definitely have this scientist, and the interview is just shocking.
Great,
it's shocking even to me.
Great. Well, we'll all tune in. Thank you, John. Appreciate your time.
Thanks, my friend.
All right, folks. By the way, we've been talking about this for a while. We're just days away from that big event that we've dubbed, or they've dubbed, the Rio Reset, the greatest threat to the U.S. dollar's global dominance in over 80 years. On July 6th, just a few days from now, BRICS nations, Russia, China, India, Brazil, Iran, and many, many more are expected to unveil their plans to circumvent the U.S. dollar, thus cratering the value of that dollar. We've already been talking about this, and they've been laying the groundwork as their central banks have been methodically divesting from the U.S. dollar and U.S. bonds in favor of what? Gold. How can you protect your IRA or 401k from the fallout from this landmark shift? Well, diversify with gold from Birch Gold Group. Historically, gold has been a safe haven in times of high uncertainty, which is right now. Get a free info kit on tax-sheltered gold IRAs by texting the word America to 989898. Again, that's America. Text it, America, 989898. July 6th marks a monumental shift happening among the nations that control 1/3 of the world's GDP. Arm yourself with information to diversify your retirement savings. Text America to the number 989898. Claim your free info kit on gold and from Birch Gold. Great folks over there. Before I hit the break, I want to remind you about my podcast YouTube page, which are both updated daily. Hear the show, tons of other content. Just hit one of those spots right there. Always free. You just got to subscribe, and we'll get you this show. We'll get you a bunch of other stuff as well. And always, this is going crazy, folks. I mean, 350 calls last night. I'm still working through them. You guys are unbelievable. I love this segment. Leave me a message, toll free, 888-601-0032. Keep it tight, keep it pithy, keep it fun. Tell us what's on your mind. You just might hear yourself on TV. We'll be back in 2.5 minutes. All right, folks, we're going to head out to the White House right now live to speak with Deputy Press Secretary Anna Kelly. Anna, really good to have you back, my friend, with the president, at NATO and the NATO chief calling him daddy, kind of like all the rest of us have been calling him daddy all this time. But wow, what respect he earned on that stage. And I'm going to go back to many other presidents. Joe Biden, the last time, it was wandering out into the pasture, couldn't figure out where he's going. And this whole crowd, every single world leader in NATO that was there was just in awe at that man. The respect took a long time in coming, but he certainly earned it. I'll let you take it away.
You're exactly right, Eric. And it was amazing to me this morning reading all of the headlines coming out of NATO, even the mainstream media acknowledging the tremendous win that this president was able to achieve this week in The Hague with this 5% defense spending pledge. You and I know, Eric, the president has been talking about this for a long time, the fact that Europe needs to pitch in more for their own defense when you have the United States comprising about 2/3 of NATO's defense budget. This president has long been saying enough is enough. This NATO summit was really critical to ensuring that not only is American defense spending continuing, but we need to make sure that all of our NATO allies are also pitching in. So this president achieved a historic win with this historic 5% defense spending pledge. And it's no wonder why you had those really positive comments from Mark Rutte, why you have mainstream media outlets even calling this the Trump summit, because it truly is. This president is showing that once again, America's leadership is restored on the world stage.
It's fascinating, and because the other times he's gone to this summit and he would talk about you need to pay your fair share and 2%. He's talking about 5% now. Pay your fair share. For this time, I think they're really going to listen, because I felt some sort of sigh of relief when he came in. They were all like, thank God you did what you did over Iran, because we have an issue. We could have an issue with Putin. And I think they all realize that they're damn lucky President Trump is president of America right now.
I think you're exactly right. And look, this is something that I think all foreign leaders, as you said, wanted to happen, that foreign leaders, past American presidents, have talked about. But as you know, this president is the only one actually able to do it. I mean, it is absolutely astonishing the fact that in just 48 hours, this president was, of course, pursuing diplomacy up until the final moments on Saturday, and then ultimately launched this just incredible strike. The fact that we dropped those over a dozen 30,000-pound bombs right on their targets, totally obliterating Iran's nuclear program. And of course, that brought Iran right back to the table. And now we have a historic ceasefire in peace in the Middle East because of this president. I mean, it is absolutely incredible what we are able to accomplish when we have strong leadership back in the White House. And this president is truly leading on the world stage and trying to usher in peace. He is the peacemaker in chief. And I think all of our NATO allies saw that, and the entire world knows that. And the entire world is safer with this president in office.
Again, we're speaking with Anna Kelly, Deputy Press Secretary. Anna, with the meeting with Zelensky, what do we expect? There are a lot of people who want to know, are we done funding Zelensky's defense in that region of the world?
Well, look, this president alluded to his conversation with Zelensky in his press conference today, and I think Zelensky said this as well. The president wants to see peace, as we said, all around the world. He wants to see peace in that war. He wants to stop the killing, the bloodshed that is killing 5,000 brave soldiers every week in this brutal, brutal war. So he continued to reiterate that to Zelensky. He's expressed to both leaders that he wants this conflict to end, as he said today. And look, this president, again, will always pursue peace, and that's, I think, what's so special about him. And he is able to look anyone in the eye, no matter how they might have had relationships with the United States in the past, to try and get peace. So this president will always be making sure that he says that to leaders around the world, and making sure that we can stop this killing and this brutal war in Russia, Ukraine, and all around the world.
You know, Anna Kelly, and we point this out, press secretary, because you handle the press. This is the department in the White House that handles the press. And the reason why I bring that up is President Trump. He's called CNN and MSNBC scum because of what they're doing with the successful mission in Iran. Are you surprised that they're continuing to try and find something wrong? I mean, it was a precision strike. Is this Trump derangement syndrome so overwhelming to them that they can't just realize that the rest of the world is on board with this?
It's unfortunately no surprise, and you might know this. I don't know if your viewers know this yet, but look, this reporter that reported this totally fake news story that undermined the incredible, as you said, efforts by our brave fighter pilots who totally dismantled Iran's nuclear program with 14 30,000-pound bombs, as Caroline Levitt has said. Everyone knows what happens when you drop 14 30,000-pound bombs on nuclear facilities. It is total obliteration. That is exactly what these brave talented fighter pilots were able to accomplish. And it is absolutely disgusting that you have outlets like CNN who are so hell-bent on undermining anything that is tied to this president, including the brave efforts of our men and women in the military in order to fit their political narrative. And this reporter, by the way, was the same reporter who repeated the fake Russia hoax, said that Hunter Biden's laptop story was Russian disinformation back in the first term. So look, he's used to this. But we're going to continue to tell Americans the truth, which is this was an incredibly successful strike executed by our brave fighter pilots that resulted in total obliteration in Iran's nuclear program. And we know that because they came back to the table, and now we have a ceasefire.
You know, Anna Kelly, appreciate your time. It would be nice if for once CNN, MSNBC, maybe the broadcast networks would just be patriotic, just be pro-America just for five damn minutes. I mean, again, I keep talking about this. When Barack Obama took out Osama bin Laden, we all clapped. We were cheering in the streets. Didn't matter who, even an I or a D next to your name, didn't black, white, gay, straight. We were all cheering the move, and that's what President Trump deserved. That he didn't get it, but he deserved that. But he didn't get it because those folks over at broadcast networks and CNN and MSNBC. Anna Kelly, Deputy Press Secretary, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you so much.
All right, folks, really, really good. That was a great interview. I really enjoy her. All right, if you're still struggling with how to deal with your tax debt, my next guest says call Tax Network USA. Let's welcome Tax Network USA spokesperson Cameron Kinsey. Cameron, good to have you back. How does Tax Network USA help clients with, let's call them maybe upscale, a little bit bigger resolution problems?
Yeah, well, thank you so much for having me on, Eric. When the IRS comes after you, we don't just play defense, we go on offense. So whether it's wage garnishment, mounting back taxes, or a lien on your home, our job is to push back and protect what you've worked for, essentially. And the filing deadline may have passed, but the penalties haven't, and they compound daily. The truth is the IRS counts on people for being too afraid to fix this issue or too confused to act. And that's really where Tax Network USA steps in. We've helped thousands of Americans find relief, and we'll do the same for you. But you just have to make that first initial call.
In this, the tax code changes. Like every time, a budget comes out and they go through the budgeting process, the big, beautiful bill, you guys are on top of it because your tax burden could change as well.
Yes, and we keep the preparation service the exact same way regardless, because we don't want to see any more bureaucratic red tape affect the average American. And we make the tax prep simple and strategic. It starts with a direct consultation. We dig into your full financial picture. If you decide to move forward with the free call with us, we take it from there. We flag every deduction. We fix any errors that we may see. We make sure that your filing is accurate and audit proof. So even though the tax season's over, if you've gotten letters from the IRS or you think that maybe something's wrong with a previous return, this is exactly the time to act. And
I think folks should understand this, that you get this, let's say you were late or you forgot something in your tax return and they're going to nail you with penalties and interest, and these things rack up really massively over time. You can negotiate down your tax burden, right?
Yeah, so we help with everything, and many taxpayers end up paying far less because we strategically negotiate with the IRS, potentially reducing penalties, reducing interest, even principal debt. So clients typically find that the savings far outweigh our service costs, in which, by the way, for the month of June, we are offering 10% off on all of our services. All you have to do is call 1-800-905-8000 or go to tnusa.com/wrap. have. Again, the consultation is completely free for the rest of June. And then you'll get a team who really knows how to keep the IRS off your back, your finances protected. But it really just only works if you're proactive. So don't wait until it's an emergency. Let's get ahead of it.
And so I don't know this. Can you negotiate out of an audit? Like if you get an audit note, and can we hurry up and say, hey, Tax Network USA, I got this audit. Can you help me get out of this?
Yes. So we take care of the entire audit. We get that off your plate. Our team goes through every single return, every document with a fine-tooth comb. And if the IRS got something wrong, which they often do, we challenge it. We file appeals when needed. You don't have to go up against them alone. And so it's really important that you have a professional team in your corner. We have CPAs, licensed attorneys, even former IRS agents who know the tax code. So we do this every single day. We know how to keep their overreach in check and protect you from being unfairly penalized.
All right, we're going to leave it there. Cameron Kinsey, Tax Network USA, what was it, 800-905-8000, if I remember right, if I have a good memory. There it is, 800-905-8000. Cameron, thank you so much for your time.
Thanks, Eric.
All right, folks, we'll be back 2.5 minutes. All right, everybody, want to welcome our next guest, who's former foreign policy advisor to President Trump and the author of this new book, Iran, an Imperialist Republic in U.S. Policy, Dr. Walid Phares. Dr. Phares, really good to have you back, my friend. You wrote an essential book on Iran and U.S. policy. You think, this is a very important question. Do you think Israel and the U.S. have stopped the threat of nuclear weapons, or is this just they're going to do it again, they're just going to start to rebuild from scratch or from wherever they are right now?
Eric, it's a phase in between, I would say, unfortunately, two conflicts. The one that has ended with the ceasefire and another one. Why am I saying another one? Because the intentions of the Islamic regime in Iran have not changed. I mean, there was no, like the Soviet Union, perestroika and reform and what have you. And there's a reason for why Tehran decided to accept the offer by our president to go for a ceasefire. And that reason is double. Number one, they realize that their nuclear program, regardless of the details about where is this material and the other material, it's broken. broken at least for 2 years. Does not mean that they may not get weapons from elsewhere. That's a different subject, but they realize that. But more important, what the Israelis have done immediately after the targeting of the nuclear structure is to go and target the militia that controls the people in Tehran and in the Islamic Republic in general. It's called the Basij militia. And the militia was about to collapse. This is when the leaders of the Islamic regime rushed to Qatar. Please tell President Trump we're ready for a ceasefire, we're ready for negotiations. What is very important to the regime is not the tools of the regime, is the regime. They are afraid that there will be a revolution. As for Israel, Eric, it's very simple. They're our allies, and they said if President Trump is asking us to accept a ceasefire, accept the principle of negotiations, we will do, but we'll keep an eye on the regime.
So, a couple important questions. We keep talking ceasefire. I realize that we've never talked, and we don't really talk about ceasefire. It's temporary. Where's the truce? Like, where's the actual "this is over" document?
Document or sit down or picture. You know, I was born and raised in Lebanon before I came and joined America. I lived the war for 15 years. And I witnessed 103 ceasefires, 103 ceasefires, every single force that was, involved in that war. Mm-hmm. Ceasefire is just cessation of hostilities. Mm-hmm. Ceasefire, when it's designed to be the beginning of negotiations, as the president wants to see happening between Ukraine and Russia, he would have negotiated with Ukraine. We see him with Zelensky, negotiated with Putin or, the general leadership of Russia, and then they accept to extend the ceasefire into a peace agreement. That's not what's happening right now. But the president has a vision, which is he doesn't need to convince Israel. He needs to convince the leaders of the Islamic regime by telling them, look, we could do business. You have nothing to offer. I mean, we were discussing a few weeks ago what is it that we can do to convince you to lower your conditions, to restrain that atomic or nuclear weapon. Now we took it out, and the only thing that they could negotiate now is an economic financial deal with the president. That's what is left for them.
Regime change has been the kind of tricky word that's been thrown around. It's never going to happen until the people of Iran say enough is enough. We're tired of these clerics, these mullahs, dragging us into these wars and conflicts that are blowing our buildings, killing our citizens. Will that ever happen?
That's a fantastic question. I mean, in our psyche, the American psyche, regime change is like from the 50s and 60s and 70s. Marines, hit the beaches, they take the presidential palace, and then we bring our guys and put them. That is not effective anymore. That is not reality anymore. It's not regime change. It's a change of government, and it's not our business to do it. Actually, even if we can, we should have and wait, as you just said, for the Iranian people to rise. But here's what the Iranians are telling me. The Iranian American diaspora also are telling me. All we need from the United States is not to have a president like President Obama in 2009, instead of supporting with his voice and words the 1.5 million people, mostly young people, boys and girls on the streets of Tehran against that Ayatollah regime. He actually struck a deal, which is the Iran deal, a transaction to send them $150 billion. So Iranians are imploring us, don't do anything. Just stop financing the regime. Obama sent 150. Biden sent about 20, maybe more, $1 billion to the regime under different reasons. And what they've done with the money is actually they funded the militias, they funded themselves, they funded a lobby here in the United States. So at this point in time, the Iranian people is under zero. They need to get to zero, which is, okay, nobody side with the regime against the population. Let's see if the population is able to do. And I think, and I agree with you, that at one point they cannot take it anymore. It will happen no matter what, like what happened in Eastern Europe. You and I remember in Eastern Europe. And it was a result of what? Of a speech delivered by Reagan, President Reagan at the time, to Gorbachev, asking him to, tear down the wall. And when he said that, then the Polish people rose, then Czechoslovakia rose, Romania, then including the Soviet Union. So we need to think along the lines of our leadership, speaking with the Iranian people. We could do negotiations as much as we want, but speaking with the Iranian people and telling them, we are morally with you. What you're doing is legitimate.
And I recall there were years in the 80s and the 90s where Iran, yeah, they always were run by the mullahs and the clerics. So they were always, but Ahmadinejad, if I'm not mistaken, was also a little bit more westernized, a little bit gave the country a little bit more flair. The internet started popping up. And at one point, they looked like they're on a path towards coming into the 20th century at the time. And then it just kind of went more fanatical recently. Why do you think that happened?
It happened because those who rule what we call the Islamic Republic of Iran are not their presidents. They are the supreme leader. He's fully ideological. Khomeini in the beginning, then Khamenei now. And then they have a guard, an SS Gestapo-like Islamist jihadi guard. And every time there is a trend in Iran, should it be so-called reform within the bureaucracy or demonstrations on the ground, as we saw with Masa Amin in 2002, when the regime killed a young girl just because she had some hair appearing, and the population exploded. These are the two ways. But then, either way, you're going to see that militia. In that militia, there was one window to deplete it when U.S. and Israel were actually depleting and taking out the command centers of that militia and also the nuclear. But the regime understood that, and they understood that if the militia is gone, nobody is going to stop the people of Iran. Yeah, so but my point here is that the price is going to be higher. The population would have enjoyed not having a militia and marched into the center of the city. But now, at this point in time, the price will be high. Eastern Europeans did it, like in Romania.
Yeah, and we hope they finally do realize it's time to stop looking up at the sky, find out if a bomb is on the way in. That'll happen as soon as you remove the mullahs. Let them do their thing, religious fanatics. Go ahead, do your thing over there. But we'll go back to that elected president democracy. Boy, would that be amazing. If they want to see things get better around the world, get Iran on board with that, and then everything may move into the right direction. Dr. Wally Faris, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you so much for having me. Thank you.
All right, really good having you. All right, folks, we'll be back 2.5 minutes. Fresh off a massive ceasefire win in the Middle East, Donald Trump was the talk of the first day at his first NATO summit of term 2. Our international neighbors had nothing but praise for Trump, unlike the people of this own country of his. Listen to Mark Rutte, the Secretary General of NATO, talk about Trump's successful Operation Midnight Hammer.
We had a big fight, like 2 kids in a schoolyard. You know, they fight like hell. You can't stop them. Let them fight for about 2-3 minutes, then it's easier to stop them.
And then Daddy has to sometimes use strong language.
You have to use strong language. Every once in a while, you have to use a certain word.
That's what we call him sometimes around here, too. What's Daddy doing today? This guy, Mark Rutte, couldn't get enough of our president during day one. He even called him Daddy. We just did this. We just did that. I think we just did that, right? Yes. Okay. Trump absolutely snapped on the fake news media yesterday, repeatedly calling all of the vicious, toxic networks that constantly smear his name scum. Listen to Trump skipping all the BS, keeping things real and blunt, as he always does.
This was an unbelievable hit by genius pilots and genius people in the military, and they're not being given credit for it because we have scum that's in this group, and not all of you are. You have some great reporters, but you have scum. CNN is scum. MSDNC is scum. The New York Times is scum. They're bad people. They're sick. And what they've done is they're trying to make this unbelievable victory into something less. Now, even they admit that it was hit very hard, okay? But it wasn't hit hard. It was hit brutally, and it knocked it out. The original word that I use, I guess it got us in trouble because it's a strong word. It was obliteration.
No, that's pretty cool. That was a pretty cool moment. Really cool moment. I'd like to play one more quote from NATO Secretary General, who might as well have shown up, I don't know, maybe with an American flag wearing a MAGA hat. This guy was Trump's biggest cheerleader. Of course, he was clearly buttering our president up because he's worried about the seemingly bottomless NATO piggy bank that we've been filling. But don't worry, folks. Trump is well aware of that. So here's one more quote from Mark Rutte, who will probably show up today, too, with a bald eagle on his shoulder. Listen to this guy. Here, go for it.
For too long, one ally, the United States, carried too much of the burden of that commitment. And that changes today. President Trump, dear Donald, you made this change possible. Your leadership on this has already produced $1 trillion in extra spending from European allies since 2016. And the decisions today will produce trillions more for our common defense to make us stronger and fairer by equalizing spending between America and America's allies.
He's right. And Trump is there. He's like, for the guy general guy said, too long, America's been footing the bill. That's why Trump is saying 5%. No more of this 2% BS. We're going to go with 5%. And if you don't pay up, you're going to pay up somewhere else. In fact, I think he told a reporter from Spain, Spain's paid basically zero for their NATO protection over the years. And he said, well, if you're not going to pay into NATO, you're going to pay with us into our tariff situation. Joy Reid, remember Joy Reid from MSNBC? Well, she may not have a primetime window anymore, but I can promise you folks, she's still the same clueless dolt that got bounced from one of the worst cable networks in the world. Here she is on CNN this time, advocating for Iran to basically be left alone to do whatever the hell they want to do. Listen.
I find it rather extraordinary that we are very casually having a conversation about the tactical success or failure of dropping a 3,000-pound bomb or two on a sovereign country that did not attack us. And we are failing to unpack or even address, as we're discussing whether or not it was effective how we bombed Iran, whether Donald Trump was correct in saying we obliterated their facilities, and not asking why on earth is the United States bombing a country that did not attack us? What on earth are we doing there at all? And why is it that there is this arrogance in the West and in the United States to say that we get to decide who can have nuclear energy?
Okay, it was very successful. You know, I'm one who doesn't like to see us involved in foreign affairs like this, but it was extremely successful. As I told Bill O'Reilly last night on his show, I was wrong. I'll admit it. I'm big enough to say I was wrong. I'm thrilled it was that surgical, and it was that surgical. Joy Reid added some context to her remarks on CNN about Iran. She thinks that if we just turned an old blind eye and let these terrorists freely tinker around with uranium, that the Middle East will be a happy place covered in sunshine, rainbows. Truly don't realize that she could get dumber than she was at MSNBC. But listen to her again, breaking down this very fragile situation in a way that only joyless Joy Reid could do.
What do you think we'll see first, World War III or nuclear war? I don't think we'll ever see nuclear war in our lifetime, but I do think we'll see a World War III.
And the reason you won't see nuclear war in our lifetime is that everyone who would deem to threaten global annihilation has nukes.
Mutually assured
destruction. And I think what would, in a weird way, make the Middle East, you know how they say the most polite society in the country is Texas? Because everybody's packing?
Everybody got guns. That's right.
You know, maybe the Middle East would be calmer.
So, okay. So you're wrong and you're right. Let's start with what you're right about. It's safer in a place where everyone's packing. Everyone's got a gun. It's always safer there. That's why no gun zones are just prime targets for bad stuff to happen. Okay, you're right about that. But do you notice in Texas, you can't bring a gun into a bar where people are drinking? Do you know why you don't do that? Because bad things happen when people are drinking or are getting out of their normal headspace with firearms. They just don't do it. That's why you don't give nukes to people like the mullahs in Iran. They're not in the right head. Don't allow them to have a nuke. See what we're saying here, Joy? It's a little different, okay? So take your time. We'll go slow for you. We got more from our old friend Joy, who suffered some, well, she actually offered some serious praise for who else? Jazzy Jasmine Crockett. Joy thinks Jazzy Jazz is Democrats' knight in shining armor, the leader that this pack of freaks so desperately needs to win something. Listen to this.
Do you feel like Jasmine Crockett should be the leading voice of the party?
Yes. And the thing is, what the Democrats do to me wrong is that they prioritize whose turn it is. Like, Democrats are very orderly. Mm-hmm. They're almost too orderly for fascism. You know, in fascism, you can't be orderly because the other side is messy. And Donald Trump stays messy. Everything he does is random, but it also exudes power. And in the case of Jasmine Crockett, a rational party facing actual fascism would say, who are our most effective voices? Who do the people listen to? Who do the people trust? Who do the people want to hear from? If it's Jasmine Crockett, we don't care who's in line.
That's right.
She's about to be the leader. We're going to put her as the head of whatever this committee is, make her the head of oversight, and put her on TV every day.
So that's music to us on the right's ears, Joyless Driver. Jasmine Crockett's your leader? That's going to be your voice? Jasmine Crockett is going to be your knight in shining armor. She's going to overtake the other brilliant one you have, AOC. And Bernie Sanders was like 100 years old. This is the one? What about the Mayor Pete? That guy. I thought you guys loved him. Or the slick hair car salesman in California, Governor Gavin Newsom. But Jasmine Crockett's the one, huh? Okay, great. Right. Awesome. Love to hear that. That shouldn't be too difficult for J.D. Vance or Don Jr., whoever, DeSantis. Speaking of Jasmine Crockett and the unnamed committee that Joy Reid wants her to lead, I believe that committee is called the House Oversight Committee, Joy. Pretty important. Anyway, they just held a vote yesterday electing California Congressman Robert Garcia to lead House Oversight Democrats. Jasmine Crockett was included in that vote, but guess where she finished? Not second, not third, but she finished dead last. Of course, she went right to the internet to rant about her loss, just like any other insecure, bratty little teenager would do. Listen to Jasmine Crockett.
I went through the first leg of this race today, and there have been recent questions about something that just wasn't true, because I'm always loud and proud about everything that I have to say. But it did cause me some issues for sure. So I placed last in the recommendation from Steering and Policy. And so with that, I am not going to caucus for a vote tomorrow. And, you know, those that have decided that they want to stay in the race to pursue the position, I am going to gracefully bow out because it just kind of is what it is, right? Like it just is what it is. And so
I'm going to gracefully bow out because I came in dead last. I came in dead last, folks. I guess I would bow out gracefully as well. That's your shining armor, Joyless Joy Reid. But before we head to break, I want to remind you about the podcast YouTube page. I have both updated daily. You can see this whole show. You missed an interview. We have John Solomon. We had Waleed Ferris. We had Deputy Press Secretary Anna Kelly in the show. You can go back, watch those anywhere, anytime. Subscribe. Any one of those along the bottom of that screen right there. Always, it's free there. And speaking of free, we have a toll-free number in this segment that's coming up next. This is just awesome. You guys left me 350 voice messages yesterday. I'm still working through them. I have about 150 to 100 left to go. I got some of the, I'll call it some of the best, the pithiest, the ones who put it together real nice and tight and concise. Again, there's the number, 888-601-0032. Let me know what you think of the show. Anything you want to talk about. Anything you want to talk about. We're going to come back with, because yesterday I asked, who's the dumbest member of Congress? That was the question for the day yesterday. Who's the dumbest member of Congress? 350 of you. And I would tell you, Jasmine Crockett came in second. AOC came in first. Jasmine Crockett came in second. And Green came in third. I believe Elon Omar or Green, third and fourth, or close third and fourth. We're going to come back with some of your voicemails. We'll be right back. This is cool. This is so much fun. Again, yesterday I asked the folks, I asked you guys, who's the dumbest member of Congress? And we threw a couple names out there. It was Hakeem Jeffries. He's the minority leader of the House of Representatives. Is it AOC? Is it Elon Omar? Jasmine Crockett? Well, you guys really came through. 305 calls in the few hours after the show last night. Another 50 to 100 calls this morning. I'm still literally working through them. I promise you I'm listening to every single one of them. I got maybe 70 total left to go. I picked a few because I love them, and I think it really represents what you guys are thinking. I really want you to be part of the show. It helps us decide what we're going to do with the show. So, Mad Dog, enough of that. Sir. Let's talk a little bit about it. What do we have first? Give me just a little hint, because I can't remember everything we put together, but what do we have first?
Someone that says, get rid of them all.
Get rid of them? Well, that's not a bad one. Let's hear it.
Boy, that was the most loaded question I've ever heard. There's no way you could pick a dumber one out of that bunch. The entire bundle is dumb. Those people are treasonous human beings that have no clue of what America's about. They completely forgotten all the people that have just died, blown to bits, bled, everything for this country to afford them the freedoms that they enjoy. They believe, while they sit in their ivory towers, that those things are just going to last forever. No, it's not. AOC and Hakeem Jeffries, we're definitely a little closer to the front, but loaded question, brother. Love your show. God bless America. God bless Donald J. Trump. And let's all, band together and make America great again.
A great comment. Really, really great comment. He kind of expressed a sentiment of many, many, literally hundreds of you. Tough to pick one out of that group. Okay, Mad Dog, next one. What's the hint?
Jane from Texas, and all Dems are dumb.
Hello, Jane. Let's go.
My name is Jane, and I live in the wonderful state of Texas. You could take any Democrat, they're the dumbest. They're all dumb. Thank you, hon.
They're all dumb. You're welcome, hon. Love that one. All right, Mad Dog, what else? What else?
We got Vicky from Michigan.
All right, I remember this one. Yeah, should play.
Hi, Eric. This is Vicky from Michigan. You can't pick the dumbest Democrat because they're all just as dumb as the next one. You got a good show. Bye.
I love it. And there's so many, literally hundreds who said the same. You can't pick one. It's too difficult of a question. One guy said, line them up, close your eyes and point. That will be the dumbest one because they're all basically just as dumb as the next one. All right, Dog, what's on the docket? What's next?
This is Donna from Washington, and she has something to say about Maxine Waters.
Ooh, okay. There were a couple of Maxine Waters. Listen.
Hi, Eric. I'm Donna from Washington State, Port Orchard. And besides the one that represents me being the dumbest one, I think Maxine Waters has it. She needs to take that big mouth of hers and wrap it around her head and chew it up and swallow it. Just my opinion. Love your show, honey.
Well, we love you too, and your opinion counts here. We want to hear what you had to say. Again, there was a specific question about who's the dumbest, but there were a lot of answers. A lot of things came in, and it's very difficult to pick all of. I would love to play them all, but like I said, 350, 400 came in since yesterday's show. Mad Dog, what else?
This is a dad that's showing love for the show.
I remember this one. Listen to this one, folks.
Hey, Eric, love you. This is the Gentry Family Zoo, or dad of 5 daughters. Me and my girls love watching you on Rav. I work a lot as a single father, and sometimes we can only watch you. We're watching you right now at like 2 a.m. We love what you do. Keep doing it. And, hey, maybe you can give us a shout-out and send us a shirt or something. Love you, brother.
There you go. Gentry family. God bless you, my friend. Single father, 5 daughters. Of course, we're going to send you a shirt. We're going to send you either a Rav shirt or a Steve Bannon is our spiritual animal shirt. Mad Dog, what else we got?
This is Michelle from North Carolina. She has something to say about Jasmine Crockett.
Wow, it's a lot of Jazzy Jasmines. A lot of people pick Jazzy Jazz as the dumbest. Let's hear her, Michelle.
Hi, Eric. This is Michelle from Fayetteville, North Carolina. You've really proposed a hard question because there are so many idiots in Congress right now on the left and some on the right. But tipping the scale has to be cockeyed Crockett. Keep up the good work. Love your show.
I love you too. But by the way, she's right. I think that was the only one who pointed out that there are some knuckleheads on the right, too. It's not only stuck with the folks on the left, although they do pretty much top the list. Dog, how many more do we have? I'm going to time this out a little bit.
We got about 5 more.
Let's go. Okay, play the next one.
Hi, Eric. This is Beth from Georgia. I am just wondering if every one of these new people in Congress
are legal. I need you to check and see all the papers and make sure they're legal. I wish I could just get loose on them. Thank you, Eric.
You get loose on them. Get loose on them. I'm pretty sure they're vetted. There must be a vetting process of making sure you're an American citizen, but I'm hoping. But I can't check it. I would love to, but I can't check it myself. Dog, what's next?
We got someone that's...
just play it.
Hey, Eric, my gay husband thinks you're very hot, just to let you know. But I just want to mention that maybe we should investigate these book publishers, which are obviously just another money laundering front for the Democrats. And while we're at it, maybe investigate all of these printing shops that are printing the flags, that are printing the signs, printing the ballots, all these printing shops that are obviously have illegal money pouring into them. I mean, how many flags have we had this week alone? Have a good one, Eric.
Yeah, so let me start with this. It confused me a little bit, my gay, hot husband. That was a little confusing, but it's okay. But you make a great point. Who are the people printing all this paraphernalia for these protests? And who's funding it? That would be a great way to find out the source of the protests. Who's paying for the printing of the flags and the pride flags and the various protest flags? Awesome question. Awesome. I'm not sure I understand the first part of your comment, but listen, folks, do me a favor. Hit me up, 888-601-0032. Do it. I want to hear what you have to say. I love hearing your voice. Maybe tomorrow we get banned. I thought we were going to have banned. I have a really good oil idea for the president. We'll bring it to you tomorrow. Bannon, War Room, net.
Once the enemy positions are pinpointed, the unit maneuvers to concentrate its fire and saturate the area. After inflicting all damage possible on the red positions, the patrol will pull back within its own lines.
United Nations troops push on in the cautious advance against the communists. An advance whose purpose, General Ridgway states, is not to seize ground, but to wipe out the enemy. The Chinese Red Army, fighting desperately in small isolated stands, prefers to give ground on wider fronts rather than join battle. And it's up to the infantry to clear out the pockets of die-hard communists. Enemy falling back to the Han River, United Nations commanders had expected that the Reds would make their stand there. But under a steady, withering barrage, GIs are able to cross the river and establish a beachhead. Within 2 hours, a pontoon bridge spans the Han, and United Nations troops and equipment pour across toward the capital city of Seoul. Moments later, Chinese communists, prisoners, are being marched to the rear. Seoul, too, falls into United Nations hands, this time not as a prime military target, but as the result of the clean United Nations sweep up the Korean peninsula. The once proud capital of the Korean Republic is a mass of ruins whose able-bodied men have been carried off to forced service in North Korea. Children and the aged are left to see the liberation of their city. Above Seoul, mud and the Marines take over. For once, the Marines almost meet their match as spring thaws slow down the United Nations push. The Marines came back into action only recently from the Hungnam beachhead. Despite obstacles, United Nations forces drive on to the 38th parallel, border of North Korea.
This is the primal scream of a dying regime. Pray for our enemies, because we're going medieval on these people. You're just not got a free shot on all these networks lying about the people. The people have had a belly full of it. I know you don't like hearing that. I know you try to do everything in the world to stop that, but you're not going to stop it. It's going to happen.
And where do people like that go to share the big lie? MAGA media. I wish in my soul, I wish that any of these people had a conscience.
Ask yourself, what is my task and what is my purpose? If that answer is to save my country, this country will be saved.
War Room. Here's your host, Stephen K. Bannon.
It's Wednesday, 25 June, in the year of our Lord 2025, 75 years ago today, the beginning of the Korean War. Of course, at the time, it was called the legislation they passed was being a police effort, a police action. Incredibly bloody. War's still not ended. They kind of have a ceasefire, just like President Trump got the other day between the Persians and the Israelis, a ceasefire. President Trump today at NATO. And this is why it was so important. He finally got NATO to step up to the plate for a meaningful defense, 5% of GDP. Folks, I don't think it's easy to comprehend what a massive victory that is for President Trump. These were people at the beginning, they couldn't even get to 2%. They committed to 2% when they overthrew the democratically elected, although Putin-aligned, government in Ukraine in a color revolution driven by the United States State Department. Remember Victoria Nuland? Three of those other war criminals? Well, NATO said they had to go to 2% at the time. Never matched it. Never made it. And if you actually looked at what they were spending, it was on climate change and women's health care and just everything but combat arms, everything but interoperability. Maneuvers had to actually work as an alliance. Right? Work as an alliance. So NATO was just kind of in shambles. President Trump, and it was quite endearing today. He was really very paternal. We're honored to have Senator Eric Schmidt from the great state of Missouri. Senator, thank you very much. I was just talking. We did a preamble to the show, a cold open. I know you couldn't see it, but it was about the Korean War. We couldn't play it this morning because we covered for the first hour President Trump's remarks and his amazing press conference. I know you've got a lot of thoughts on this, on burden sharing and being an ally. What do you take away from President Trump's trip to the Netherlands for the two-day summit, sir?
Well, Steve, it's great to be with you, by the way. I think it's pretty remarkable that, I consider myself a realist, right? And I think you view the world similarly. And it's really kind of coming of age now. We're moving away from this sort of neoliberal, this neoconservative, this kind of Wilsonian view of the world where so many of the foreign policy blob in this town in permanent Washington think we could be everywhere all at once all the time. And that's not true. Like, if you believe in scarcity, we have to make decisions. What are in the core interests of the United States of America? Clearly, the 21st century is going to be defined by who wins this great competition, us or China. So Europe has to step up in a much more meaningful way. So President Trump having that conversation with European leaders in 2017 and 2018, very different than the reception he got today, which I think is telling and why the election was so important in 2024. It cements the status. He's a real leader. And I think I actually went to Munich, the security conference. I had never been. I went this February. J.D. Vance was over there, too, and, of course, delivered that really important speech about free speech. And I went over there to tell him not what these Europeans wanted to hear, but the truth, which is you need to step up. Like, this dynamic that existed after World War II, where we kind of had an umbrella of security, we had these ridiculous trade deals, all of that was to make sure that they could, stave off Soviet communism. Well, after the Cold War, we never really adjusted. And now is the time for that kind of adjustment from a foreign policy perspective. Sort of the globalists had their time. And then also on the trade side, which is why, it's so important what President Trump's trying to do to rebalance the equation on trade, too. So I'm just really optimistic. Now, the proof will be in the pudding, Steve, as you know. They've made sort of these great flowery speeches before. Their 5% number, it can't be for pensions. Like pensions and percentage of GDP don't win wars. Munitions do, bullets do. And the problem, of course, Europe has is they have an atrophied, defense industry. And the deindustrialization that even Germany now is experiencing, they got a lot of problems. But at least this is positive momentum, and it's really all because of President Trump.
They're hectoring President Trump about the different intelligence reports, and of course he says, "Hey, look, it's total obliteration, and we did our job. The 12-day war is over. I'm getting back on a plane. I got other problems. I'm trying to deal with the Ukraine situation." What are your thoughts on the 12-day war and where we stand right now? He said, "Hey, look, the Iranians may come in next week. I may meet with the Persians. I don't know if I'm going to sign anything." What's your sense, and what's the folks in Missouri's sense of all this?
Well, I tell you, we were in this kind of Ukraine debate a year and a half ago, like more money for Ukraine. And I would say on the Senate floor, speaking out against the additional money, there's literally been no person in Missouri who's ever come up to me and said, "You know what, Eric, we want you to go fight for another $60 or $80 billion for Ukraine." This just never came up. Ironically, securing their border while we had a wide open southern border. So now, I think that, again, this sort of realism view is kind of taking hold. And I think what President Trump, the most important thing, Steve, that happened, I think, in the last week, and I talked to President Trump to thank him because I was talking to him. I didn't want to get us dragged into some long, protracted conflict in the Middle East. The American people don't want that. Missourians don't want that. Now, a targeted, overwhelming Jacksonian sort of show force on a key strategic core national interest of the United States, that's one thing. But I think his ability and the restraint that he showed in pivoting to peace and a ceasefire was really important because, trust me, there were plenty of people in this town who were wanting him to be, more engaged and have more involvement and pull us in. And I think if we've learned anything from the last 30 years, which I hope we have, is that that's just not our role. We can't be the cop on the beat around the world. We've got a lot of problems here that we need to address. We still need to be, sort of a dominant military, but overwhelming force only when it's in our interest. And we're not going to be, nation builders around the world with this kind of wandering foreign policy that's dominated the last 30 years.
By the way, our audience remembers because we played your speech in its entirety from the floor, and I think it's one of the big reasons Mitch McConnell's not majority leader. I think was your speech and a couple others that really you stuck the landing. By the way, Missouri had a pretty big part in this, right? The B-2s came out of Missouri.